obviously, we want to open it up by talking about the government shutdown. Where does the shutdown stand at this moment?
I'm hopeful that it can be opened up pretty soon. There are discussions going on, and one of the solutions is to have a vote on what the Democrats are advocating for. They're advocating for continuing these expanded Obamacare subsidies. These subsidies are basically to people making $100,000 and more. So if you make $100,000 a year, you get $13,000 in subsidies from these expanded subsidies. If you make $225,000 a year, you get about $1,500. So it's quite a bit of money, and primarily to rich people. So that's what the Democrats are advocating before they will vote for the spending level that basically they all voted for last December. The spending level that the Republicans have put forward in their continuing resolution is the Biden spending levels from December of 24. They're identical. So every Democrat in the Senate has voted for this, who is now voting against it. That's a predicament, but I think that perhaps if we have a vote on these expanded Obamacare subsidies, that may placate them enough that they will go back to voting for the spending levels that they advocated last year.
So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
I think so. I think there's at least a 50% chance. Could even happen today. Level of disagreement I have not seen since I've been here, and it is disruptive. Look, as much as we should cut spending, we should have less of a debt, and I oppose a lot of the better off if we continue to pay the workers who are doing the work. So I have voted for and advocated, and will likely do this again today on the floor, to pay our soldiers, to pay our air traffic controllers, to pay all the people who are showing up for work for the federal government and who aren't being paid. I will vote for that again today. I don't quite understand, even though we have a disagreement on the actual spending levels and the Obamacare, why we wouldn't continue to pay the government workers who are showing up each day.
Well, what about SNAP benefits, those who get them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of government that could continue, and there have been various proposals. What I propose is that we continue spending all of the money at about 94% of what we spent last year. If you spent all the money and didn't cut anything beyond that, you would actually balance your budget in about 5 years. So I would keep government open, never shut it down, but go to a lower spending level, because I think that's what we need.
You alluded to this just a few seconds ago about it seems like Washington is more divided than it ever has been. And both sides are pointing fingers at the other, but no one really seems to want to kind of meet in the middle to work and work this thing out. Is that pretty much it?
I think it depends on the issue. On spending, yes, I think we're at loggerheads on the spending. On other issues, in the last couple of weeks, I've worked with Democrats on ending the presidential emergencies that he is using to justify tariffs. I've worked with them on trying to prevent a new war from striking out in Venezuela. Today, I will work with Senator Tim Kaine and others to discuss the war powers resolution boats off the coast of Venezuela, and we're not going to identify them, and we're not going to produce evidence that they are transporting drugs. Then we would be in a state of war, because the only time that it is justified to kill the enemy just because they happen to be where you don't want them to be and they're in a combat zone is in time of war. When you don't have a war on, typically things that are against the law are approached from a criminal point of view. So, for example, the Coast Guard off of Miami interdicts drugs every day, but we know that about 25% of the time the boats they stop don't have any drugs on, and so they just say, all right, pass on. They don't kill them. If we blew up every boat, that would mean 1 in 4 of the boats being blown up might not have drugs. There are some allegations that some of these boats, frankly, are fishermen. Some of them may have drugs, but even if they have drugs, the penalty in our country typically is not just to kill you. If you suspect somebody in your neighborhood has drugs in their house and selling drugs, we don't send a Predator missile through their house and blow them up. You arrest them. One of the interesting things about this is when they have found survivors to blowing up these boats, they don't arrest them. They don't collect the drugs. They send them back to their country of origin, which makes me think, well, gosh, maybe they aren't that much of a threat, or maybe they don't have drugs at all if we're not even going to willing to prosecute them. So that's a big issue where there is bipartisan agreement. Not a lot of bipartisan agreement. I'm a minority of the Republicans that's willing to discuss this. But so I think that it's not that we are at odds because we hate each other. On the spending, we just have differences of opinion on how much should be spent. And I think actually both parties are spending too much, and both parties are not serious about the debt.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the elections this week. And I know just a few states had the elections, but based on the outcome of these elections, are Republicans worried they may lose control of Congress next year?
I think it's hard to tell. I mean, Virginia's gone blue for quite a while. We haven't won a race in Virginia in a while. As far as New Jersey, I think that's similar. As far as New York City, it's been a long, long time since a Republican won. And I think even Republican-leaning mayors have been independent, not Republican, when we've gotten a decent one. I do think the people in New York are taking a big risk. I think they should study Venezuela and study the empty store shelves and what comes with price controls, what comes with the government distributing the food. There's a great meme on the internet the other day, and it had a picture of two vending machines side by side. One vending machine says capitalism and it's completely full. The other vending machine says socialism and it's empty. That's what happens with socialism. When you take away the incentive to make a profit, people don't work very hard. You either have too much food or too little food because the supply and demand that the marketplace dictates to producers is absent. But I hope that doesn't happen in New York, but I think they've made a big mistake choosing socialism.
I know I asked you this last time we had talked, but how much of a hold does President Trump have on the Republican Party?
Still quite a bit. I think particularly on, for example, I think most farmers have discovered that if they didn't already know this, that tariffs are bad for them. Soybean farmers in my state are suffering. Soybean farmers in Iowa and Illinois, Indiana, all the Midwestern states are suffering. But not only the farmers not that vocal yet, the farm state senators haven't been vocal either. That's either for fear of President Trump retribution or because they have mixed feelings. They like the president. I do too. I voted for the president. I support him. I'd support him again tomorrow against Biden or Harris. But at the same time, doesn't mean that I won't continue to challenge certain policies that I think are bad. But I think the discontent is growing louder. I think he's going to try to stave off that discontent by giving them money. That's not really consistent with the Republican philosophy. We don't usually believe, oh, let's put in a place of policy that cripples farmers and then give them money in replace of that. I think we should stop the injurious policy rather than giving them money, particularly because there really isn't any money. He says he's going to give them tariff money, but we're still $2 trillion in the hole. At the end of the day, we're $2 trillion in the hole. So there is no extra money lying around. We are actually short $2 trillion a year. So I think we need to be very careful what we're doing with this trade war.
I want to lastly, and I appreciate your time, sir, talk about something here in Eastern Kentucky. You were just here, the tourism effort, this Leaf and Blossom Trail. Can you talk about that?
For a long time, I've felt, that we get outcompeted in the tourism industry. Tennessee and North Carolina get bigger crowds than we do, but our trees and our mountains are equally as beautiful. We have many beautiful small towns that are nice to visit, stay in a bed and breakfast in a small town. And so came up with the idea that instead of each county advertising their own tourism or their own particular thing, we should get about 25 counties together and form a foundation. So we formed a foundation about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Eastern Kentucky Leaf and Blossom Trail. And so we've got an actual map with the trail. And our goal is to raise enough money. We're going to start with seeing what we can do privately, and we're going to see if we can then spend the money in a concerted way. So instead of one county, which may not have the resources to advertise that much, if they all come together and advertise as a unit, we may be able to get the Leaf Trail more recognized nationally. We're also looking at the example of the Bourbon Trail. The Bourbon Trail has been phenomenally successful. And it requires a distillery or a restaurant. You want to be noticed on the Bourbon Trail, you pay a subscription. We'll see. Eastern Kentucky is going to be a little bit more difficult than the Bourbon Trail because the distilleries all have a significant revenue source. And so we'll have to see if it can work by subscription. I think a combination of subscription and then also, significant donors. I think we can get this going sufficient. I'd like one person in charge of it so they can direct the advertising and sort of try to get ourselves in the mix of trying to draw people away from Tennessee. The crowds are so thick down there. If you drive to look at the leaves in Tennessee, it's bumper to bumper for 100 miles, which is great for Tennessee because they all stop in the next city and have lunch. But we need to like I say, our mountains are something God gave us. Let's take advantage of that.
I know what you're saying because I used to live in Knoxville, so I went to the Smokies all the time for that. Lastly, the coal industry is pretty much kind of dwindled in the past few years. Is tourism kind of the replacement industry of the coal industry?
I don't think I can judge what will or won't be the replacement. My hope is that tourism will be part of that. I'd like to keep mining coal as well. We do some metallurgic coal still in the mountains. There still is some coal for steam power that's both in West Virginia and in Kentucky. And so my hope is that continues and that we don't, at least by anything government does, push the coal completely out of business. But you're right, we do need other things. There have been some advancements with aerospace industry up near Moorhead. Moorhead University has gotten involved with some of that. I'm not as familiar with the things across into West Virginia, but I'm sure West Virginia is looking at other alternatives as well. But we do need something else. And tourism is something that doesn't require, oh, here's $10 billion. The tourism is there. The beauty is there naturally. We have to have some advertising money. But the reason I'm trying to do it privately and make it self-sustainable, there have been a lot of programs for Appalachia through the federal government over time, and I'm not so sure we could judge them as all a huge success. There's been a lot of money spent, but I want something that we can actually see the success and that is ongoing and self-sustaining by the businesses. Let's say 50 new bed and breakfasts open and they were paying a subscription a month, to be part of this advertising. That we actually have some distilleries in Eastern Kentucky as well, plus the mountains, the overlooks, Cumberland Gap, Red River Gorge, Natural Bridge Park. There's a lot of good stuff in Eastern Kentucky.